Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. For over a decade, we've all been conditioned to view one man as the absolute, unshakable moral center of this entire cinematic universe. I'm talking about Steve Rogers, Captain America, the kid from Brooklyn who simply doesn't know how to back down. He's the ultimate Boy Scout, right? The guy who always does the right thing, even when the entire world is screaming at him to move. His morality is so deeply ingrained in our pop culture consciousness that he's essentially become the bedrock of our cinematic trust. We have trusted him implicitly through dozens of films and countless, literally world-ending scenarios. But I'm here to tell you today that this trust, this unyielding blind faith we have in the golden boy of the franchise, might be the exact weapon being used against us. I want to introduce a completely mind-bending paradigm shift right now. We're going to do a detailed forensic cinematic breakdown of Steve Rogers' true role in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday film. I've been meticulously looking at the visual evidence, tracing the narrative breadcrumbs, and deeply analyzing the history of these filmmakers, and I am telling you, we have all been looking in the completely wrong direction for a very, very long time. So I need you to ask yourself, what if Steve Rogers isn't the hero of Avengers Doomsday? What if Steve Rogers actually is the Doomsday? Just let that thought sit with you for a second. I know, it sounds completely insane. It's almost blasphemous to say out loud to anyone who has actively followed this universe. We all desperately want to believe that he got his happy ending. We want him to have his quiet, well-deserved dance with Peggy Carter in a sunlit living room. But as we methodically dismantle our preconceived notions about Captain America today, I want you to adopt a slow-paced, deeply analytical mindset. The tone we're stepping into is terrifying because it requires us to fundamentally doubt the one character we were taught never to question. We need to look at the evidence today not with our lingering nostalgia, but with absolute cold cinematic logic. Part 1. The ultimate MCU betrayal. The director's master plan. To truly understand where a story of this immense magnitude is going, you have to understand the psychological profile of the storytellers themselves, the Russo brothers. When we analyze their history, one thing becomes crystal clear right away. They do not do accidents. Every single frame, every shadow, every specific costume choice, the exact length of a character's beard, the isolated farmhouse chosen for a quiet scene, it is all curated with microscopic precision. They are grandmasters, moving pieces on a giant chessboard, and honestly, we're usually just looking at the board itself. They have this immense, proven precedent for pulling off devastating, slow-burn twists that play aggressively on audience psychology. Just think back to their track record. They spent an entire film, an incredibly intense espionage thriller, hiding the Winter Soldier's true identity in plain sight, completely shifting the foundation of Steve's world and ours. And then, consider Thanos. We're talking about the greatest villain in modern cinematic history, and what did they do with him? They made him deeply, uncomfortably sympathetic. They gave him a soulful, tragic arc that made audiences quietly understand his twisted, horrifying logic. They actively thrive on subverting our expectations of good and evil and manipulating our psychological attachments to these characters. This brilliance really illustrates their ultimate magic trick, which they pulled off seamlessly in Captain America: Civil War. Depending entirely on your perspective, the Russos framed the Avengers themselves, and specifically Steve Rogers, as the villains of that story. They broke the most beloved team apart by proving that our heroes' unchecked righteousness, their absolute belief in their own moral superiority, could actually be incredibly dangerous to the rest of the world. They crafted a narrative where literally half the audience viewed the Golden Boy as a vigilante and a direct threat to global security. They love to flip our understanding of heroes, proving time and time again that perspective is absolutely everything. If they are willing to make us root against Tony Stark or question Steve Rogers' defiance of global law, you better believe they are absolutely capable of taking that concept to its ultimate, most horrifying conclusion in this next phase. Part 2. The Secret Empire Precedent. The 2017 comic book betrayal. Now, let's pivot to the source material that proves this terrifying theory isn't just some wild guess. It is entirely historically possible. When adapting these massive stories, the MCU loves to pull from the most controversial, boundary-pushing comic book runs they can find. And let me tell you, there is no run more controversial in the modern era than writer Nick Spencer's 2017 Secret Empire event. This wasn't just your standard comic book arc with explosions and laser beams, not at all. It was a psychological thriller that pulled the rug out from under 70 years of publishing history. I want to take you back to the sheer dread and absolute confusion readers felt as Spencer revealed that reality had been subtly altered. Steve Rogers had actually been a deep cover sleeper agent his entire life. Think about that. The man holding the shield, the man leading the Avengers into battle, the symbol of hope himself, was secretly and methodically orchestrating their entire downfall from the inside.
I really want to emphasize the devastating, gut-wrenching cultural impact of just 2 words, Hail Hydra. Delivered on the most shocking splash page in recent Marvel history, those 2 words effectively collapsed the comic universe overnight. The visceral feeling of betrayal among fans was unlike anything the medium had seen in years. And here is the absolute crucial point for our cinematic investigation today. The filmmakers read absolutely everything. They know exactly how much narrative power, how much raw emotional betrayal that storyline holds. They aren't afraid to adapt the unexpected. In fact, they actively seek out the stories that will elicit the strongest, most polarized emotional reaction in a crowded, dark theater. They are notorious for taking the most shocking comic panels and translating them into billion-dollar cinematic moments. Part 3. Analyzing the trailer evidence. A forensic breakdown. So let's take a forensic investigation of the new visual evidence we've been presented with. We have to look past the dramatic music and the rapid-fire editing to analyze exactly what is being shown to us. When we look closely at how Steve is operating in this new footage, we see a deeply disturbing pattern of extreme isolation. Let's carefully walk through the exact psychological profile of what a sleeper agent actually is. We often think of spies actively sneaking through vents and stealing state secrets, right? But a sleeper agent is far, far more insidious. They are a deep cover operative, embedded to act as a potential asset only when triggered. It requires immense, terrifying patience. A sleeper agent has to build a flawless cover story. Imagine the grueling psychology of having to live a normal life. You have to mow the lawn, smile at your neighbors, kiss your spouse goodnight, all while harboring a singular, devastating purpose ticking away in your mind. The sheer psychological isolation required to maintain that facade for decades without cracking is exactly what makes Steve Rogers the perfect candidate. His stubbornness, his absolute unwavering commitment to a cause. What if that commitment was just pointed in the completely wrong direction? I want you to look incredibly closely at this visual aesthetic. At his return appearance, it perfectly, meticulously mirrors his Infinity War look. The thick beard, the long, unkempt hair. In cinematic visual language, especially for a character originally as clean-cut and uniformed as Steve Rogers, this look means one definitive thing. He is Rogue. The absolute last time we saw him looking exactly like this, he was an international fugitive. He was operating entirely without oversight, without a government handler, without any overarching authority. By returning him to this specific visual aesthetic right now, the directors are non-verbally communicating to us that Steve has purposefully severed his ties to the established order of the universe. Only back then, his defiance was for the greater good. What does it mean when that exact same visual language of defiance is used for multiversal sabotage? Part 4. Sabotage disguised as love. The reality of Earth 828.
This brings us to arguably the most heartbreaking realization of this entire breakdown. We need to deeply analyze his chosen timeline, Earth 828. We all watched Avengers Endgame. We all teared up at that beautifully scored final dance. But let's look at the cold, hard reality of what he actually did and uncover the sinister truth hiding behind his seemingly perfect ending. Let's walk through Steve's exact methodology step by step because it is chillingly precise. Step 1. He retreats to Earth 828. Why this specific timeline? Well, because it's a completely vulnerable universe with no SHIELD, no Avengers Initiative, and crucially, no Tony Stark to invent time travel and come looking for him. There is zero accountability structure that would ever notice a sleeper agent embedding himself. Step 2. He builds the ultimate romantic cover story. He plays the returning war hero, settling down with Peggy Carter. This is the most sinister aspect of the entire plan. He is using Peggy and our immense emotional attachment to their love story as the perfect, impenetrable camouflage. And step 3, by existing in a timeline he was fundamentally never meant to be in, his very presence acts as the catalyst. I am telling you, his timeline branch causing the multiverse collapse is not a tragic romantic side effect. It is deliberate, calculated sabotage disguised as a love story.
Part 5. Loki and the Anomaly. The TVA arrives. Let's move to that chilling moment we see in the footage when Loki arrives at Steve's front door holding a TVA card. This single interaction completely recontextualizes everything we thought we knew. Let me explain why this is absolutely not a friendly, neighborly warning visit. The TVA doesn't make house calls to say hello. I want to detail exactly what Loki represents at this stage in the narrative.
As we saw at the grueling end of his own journey, Loki made the ultimate sacrifice. He has spent literal centuries sitting at the end of time, acting as the god of stories. He has spent countless lifetimes painstakingly identifying timeline anomalies, physically holding the fracturing branches of reality together with his bare hands. The sheer immense power and responsibility of that role cannot be overstated. He does not leave that throne for a minor infraction or temporal parking ticket. Therefore, the fact that Loki is standing on Steve Rogers' porch means only one undeniable thing. The TVA has finally, definitively identified the absolute ground zero of a total structural collapse of reality. Let's look at the terrifying juxtaposition and realization that washes over this specific scene. Really look at the imagery. Steve Rogers, the man standing in his softly lit doorway holding a baby, playing the absolute perfect domesticated family man, he is the anomaly. The contrast is sickening when you think about it. The man holding a child is actually a weapon of mass multiversal destruction. He is the one who caused the incursions by selfishly and deliberately fracturing time. In this precise moment, as Loki solemnly hands him that card, Steve's perfect decades-long cover is blown completely. The facade of the happy ending drops right there on the porch, and the stark reality of his multiversal sabotage is exposed for the very first time. Part 6. Doom is the savior, flipping the paradigm. So where does this leave us for the climax of the film? If Steve Rogers is the deep-covered disease slowly killing the multiverse, then who is the cure? This is where the storytellers flip the cinematic paradigm entirely. I want to deeply analyze this profound quote we got: "I am the only way." Victor Mondoom has always been a character who genuinely believes his absolute iron-fisted rule is the only salvation for an inherently flawed humanity. But what if, in this specific, dire scenario, Dr. Doom is actually right? I am proposing the idea that Doom views himself as the only adult in a room full of children who are breaking the universe. He is stepping in not to maliciously conquer a healthy reality, but to forcefully, aggressively fix what Captain Hydra deliberately broke. Doom sees the catastrophic sickness of the incursions tearing reality apart. He tracks the infection back to Earth 828, and he realizes that to save existence itself, he has to completely eliminate the anomaly. I want you to vividly imagine sitting in the movie theater during this third act climax. Just imagine the immense, suffocating emotional weight of this twist. Imagine the absolute silence descending on the crowd as the horrifying realization dawns on you alongside everyone else in the dark room. The traditional villain, Dr. Doom, is the only one who actually knows the truth. He is the only one desperately trying to stop the multiverse from dying. And the trusted hero, the man we followed for over a decade, the man whose moral compass we believed was absolute, he was the weapon all along. We have spent years cheering for the sleeper agent who brought the entire house down from the inside. As we wrap up this breakdown, I want to leave you with one final, lingering question to turn over in your mind. What if Steve Rogers is not the heart of the story, but the bomb inside it? We've been eagerly looking for a traditional villain in Avengers Doomsday, waiting for a cosmic threat to attack our heroes from above. But the most effective, most devastating sabotage doesn't come from a spaceship in the sky. It comes from inside the house. I highly encourage you to take this new perspective, heavily question everything you thought you knew about the MCU's greatest hero, and watch how the terrifying pieces of this cinematic puzzle suddenly fit perfectly together. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep analyzing every frame.